Started. So, Hari Om and welcome everyone. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Nitra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe Namaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Datkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyaha Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So welcome everyone for the 7th chapter. We are going to be doing the 16th shloka for sure today. But let us talk about what this chapter is really starting to talk about, right? So this chapter starts with an introduction to Ishvara or God, as we say. And Krishna says, I will tell you everything you really need to know about who this God is. So it'll be good, I guess, if we have all our 5-year-olds and 3-year-olds joining this class, because they will get an immediate introduction to God from the day one. And I remember Madhuri used to say, Laya used to ask this question, about God, right when she was only 3-year-old, I think, right? So this is exactly this is exactly what this chapter is really talking about. And we are sort of entering this middle section, right? So when we reflect upon who is this God and what is God's function, so I want to hear from all of you, what have you gathered so far? Has your opinion about God changed after getting into this chapter? Is God really the person sitting in one place in heaven, who decides that, he's going to give us whatever we need or whatever we don't need? How do we look at God?
Like from Shloka 7, we learned that God is everywhere. There is nobody higher than God. So he is like in sun, he's in everything, all are his vibhutis, wherever we look.
Very nice. Very beautiful. Exactly. Anything else which profoundly comes to your mind? Because at the end of the day, this is also teaching where, as you are telling your grandchildren, right? As you tell Vivan, as you tell Laya, as you tell Shravya, Sharva, right?
Yeah. So yeah, in the beginning we think like, somewhere existing. So when we pray and do some rituals, some things will come to you, kind of a thing. It will happen. And
Right.
now with this kind of a little bit knowledge, we know that it's all pervading, and it's the way you think and get connected. That's all. That's what it is actually. So
Right.
it's
And
everywhere.
also, he's
Uh-huh.
everywhere. He's the one who does everything. He's the creator of the universe. But even creation, not from how do I say, just okay, yeah, he's a creator of the universe, and okay, I accept it. No, but there is a logic by which he explains his creation too, right? I mean, he shows we did the couple of shlokas from Mundaka Upanishad and one other Upanishad also about how ultimately this entire world is a creation in the sense, the example that was given was about the spider that creates its own web. The spider itself, from its own self, is creating this web. And this web is actually Maya.
Yeah.
And
So we
this
are
Maya,
creating.
we yes, the in we in the we as part of the total mind, as part of the that yeah, Ishvara are creating this entire world. So as part of Ishvara, we are creating this entire world, but as an individual, also we are creating our own individual minds. So this is the beauty and the power of Ishvara, where Ishvara by himself, he creates his entire world. But as we will see in towards the shlokas, is even though he creates the world, he says, I'm not in them. They are in me. I am not in them. So that is one of the
Beautiful.
shlokas which he will explain that very beautifully here. Any other thoughts before we go on?
Hari Om, the other thought that we have come across, or I have, has sunk in, is for me is there is Ishvara, like you just said, there's Ishvara, and then there is the Brahman. Ishvara is for us to connect with. He's Brahman in the with the when he with his Maya, Prakriti, and he has created this world of objects. The creator, the created, and the creation. It's all the Lord. It's the Brahman. It's like Krishna as a whole. He is Brahman, but at the same time, Krishna in the form, he's telling us that he's trying to teach us that we are that part, we are the jiva part of that whole. It's like, through
Yeah.
he's through his whole life. It is like each story of his is a new, it's just not a story. It has more to it than just what, it's like the more you scratch the surface, the more essence you get out of it, kind of thing.
That's
So
right.
that is
Exactly.
something that has definitely sunk in, that these are not something that you take them as at a face value. There is so much depth to each sloka. Each and every sloka can become a Mahavakya, and we can attain our moksha just by understanding one shloka and one word, and it's good. But
Yes.
since we are not there yet, we are going to be going through the Gita goes through us, but we go through the Gita, but Gita doesn't go through
No,
us.
definitely
We are
Gita
trying
is
to
going
change
through
that.
it. For what you just articulated, Suvarna, that is for sure the Mahima of Gita going through you, right? So definitely Gita is going through, and it allows us to see the power of God. Like you said, Krishna is the Saguna form of the Brahman. Brahman by itself doesn't create. Brahman is by himself or herself or itself, whatever you might say. But Brahman in the form of Ishvara is the creator, the whole Saguna part of it. Yeah. So we come to recognize that ultimately God is not a person. And this Ishvara darshan that we get out of contacting this beautiful, and I'm looking out of my window on the 5th floor, I just see this beautiful, I mean, the mountains and the trees, and it's just beautiful. I mean, you see that Ishvara darshan, you just get the darshan of Ishvara as soon as you get up in this morning, So it's all about the fact that I should understand God is just not that one person. And God is, he's not just an Ekarupa also, he's a Vishwarupa, which is where, again, in this middle portion of Gita, where we come up to accepting that God as this Vishwarupa Darshanam. So Krishna is really taking us to a much higher level where you can see the entire world is that Ishwara Rupa. And when you see that way, you know that he is sort of preparing a mind to recognize that Ishvara is beyond just a creation, he's beyond dissolution, he's beyond even the sustenance power of it. And that is what ultimately is prevented, which allows to prepare a mind to that acceptance, because ultimately, Uddaredatmanatmanam, mind itself is a culprit, mind itself is through which we can actually rise. So then, as Meenu also pointed out, this God Ishvara we found is of the two aspects, the Para Prakriti and the Apara Prakriti. All the mountains, all the trees, everything that I see is the Apara Prakriti. The nature, which is the nature of Ishvara, which I can understand because I'm seeing everything in front of me. But then there is beyond this aspect, which is the Para Prakriti, which is what gives life to all this things that I see. All these trees, all these birds, all these human beings. What is it that makes them be who they are? It is that Para Prakriti, or that essence of it. And that is what he's trying to say. And this one, there is a Ena Rupam Rasam Gandham Sparshta Maithunan Eteneva Vijanati Kimatra Parishishyate. That principle because of which I'm aware of this entire world, that invisible changeless substratum. That is the Paraprakriti. And that is what he's trying to say. Krishna is trying to say that both are that Ishvara. So that one, we did that. And ultimately, there is nothing but Ishvara everywhere. And it is for us to, once we have seen the Vibhutis as Ishvara, for us, it's important to get away from it and understand what is it that is making this whole world. And that is the part that Gita is pushing us to a much higher level. I mean, how many of us can even recognize this entire world as God, right? That itself takes a certain amount of understanding, studying, and learning. But he's saying even now go beyond this also and understand that ultimately this is all nothing but God. So anyway, that one I wanted to make sure we understand. And this is the 7 beautiful shloka where we saw that ultimately what Krishna is saying, that matta parataram na anyat, there is really nothing other than me everywhere. And just like how we saw the ocean and the waves, and in again Chandogya Upanishad, previously I quoted something from Keno Upanishad, Now, Chandogya Upanishad, where it says Vacharambanam Vikaro Namadeyam. I don't know if you've heard this thing. It's Vacharambanam. Ultimately, they're all nothing but names and forms. Vacharambanam Vikaro Namadeyam. They're all just names. And this one, they're all, that's all. There is actually no substance called really an ocean or a river. If you look at it, ocean is nothing but water. In that water, you have all these waves and bubbles and, which takes up different forms. Some of them are big waves, some of them are small waves, some of them are small bubbles, big bubbles. So they're all nothing but names and forms. Ultimately, there is nothing but water. So too, Vacharambanam Vikaro Namadeyam basically is saying that ultimately everything is nothing but that Ishvara. All these, everything, whatever I see, which I give reality to, is nothing but names and forms. Just like we said, even the clay pot and the mud, how everything is nothing but mud. It is that mud which gives rise to the clay pots and the plates and the a ladle, all that stuff. So that is what he's trying to show. And we saw this example of the necklace. But, and then we saw these last time. The reason why we are unable to see God everywhere is because we have given reality to things. And because of the reality to things, we have accepted the world as the forms and the names, and we've given a lot of reality to the forms and the names. And all this has happened because of this process that I have put out here, because from time immemorial, we are used to this habit of giving reality to something which is not there, So that is why ultimately we have become so habituated in thinking about this world as its names and forms. We need to break that habit. We need to literally go back the way we came, Only then we can actually accept the world as ultimately as nothing but God. So I just wanted to put this. And here in this one also, which we talked about last time, this is just reinforcement of the same ideas as last time. We, this is an Einstein quote here where he says, a human being is part of the whole called by us as universe, a part limited in time and space. So we experience ourselves by only our thoughts and feelings. And this thoughts and feelings, it separates us from everything else, And this thoughts and feelings is actually nothing but a maya. It's a delusion. And this delusion is the prison for us, because everything we transact in this world, through this previous slide which I put, that everything in this world, we have become habituated in thinking that this is what it is. It restricts us to our personal desires and affection to only a few people. So what should we do? We should free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So Einstein just takes it to that level. But like we said last time also, we need to go beyond that level and see that ultimately it is not that we are embracing everything, but we have to recognize that ultimately there is nothing to embrace, because everything is nothing but God. So very different level we need to go to. So that is where this beautiful thing takes you to. Any thoughts so far? So again, just bring. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I am trying to understand. You said the trees are all apara prakriti, right?
Apara prakriti, yeah, which is inert.
Inert, but still we understand that it is existing, right? It is existing, or we should think that it's also Maya?
No, so it is existing. There is no question about it. So it is just, let's take the example of the ocean and the waves. That's a little better to understand. Then we will connect it to trees. So when I'm standing in the, in front of the Atlantic Ocean or anything, I see this beautiful waves going up and down and everything. And even a surfer, for example, when you see, he uses all these waves to navigate himself, correct? He's given so much of reality to the waves to navigate himself. So to me, as a spectator, when I'm watching that ocean, I only see those waves. Am I able to see nothing but water? Actually, this is a great meditative, contemplative exercise. Next time when you're in front of the beach, especially these oceans, it doesn't happen so much. Maybe it will in Lake Michigan also, but ocean gives you much bigger that. Can you shift your attention? All it is shifting your attention from seeing the waves and the bubbles and everything to seeing only water. Try that exercise. Just try that exercise. Okay. Once you try that exercise and you recognize that it's nothing but water, now let us take it to the example of the trees. Okay. Now you may say, it is easy for me to do this kind of a contemplation when I'm in front of the ocean, because ultimately it's only water, which gives you different things. But whereas in the world, I'm seeing sometimes green trees, brown trees, small trees, shrubs, everything. So my mind doesn't go immediately because my mind is so stuck on the different forms and the colors. It's so much more difficult. Correct? But ultimately, that is what I need to do. I need to just shift my mind's attention from seeing that these are all trees to seeing that ultimately it is that para prakriti, not apara prakriti. It's a huge leap. Okay, this is not an easy thing because my mind is again habituated. My mind is so habituated to seeing only trees. Correct?
Okay. So going back to your water example, see, we are still seeing only water. You said look at only water. Likewise, with respect to the tree, we are looking only at the tree, but you're saying go beyond that and think that, don't think of it from the material point of view.
Correct. Yes. And it's not easy. Like you're saying that, how do I look at the tree? Do I look at the tree as, do I allow that form to fade in my mind and I see nothing but a blank wall? No, that is not what we are asking anyone to do. What you're looking at the tree and you're recognizing first at one level that this is another creation of God.
Correct.
Ultimately, it's only in the mind you're doing this, because when you're interacting with the world, you have to interact it as a tree. You're not going to bump into the tree and say that, oh, there is no tree. That is not what it is. Okay. It is in your mind, you're able to accept this tree also as no different than me, myself. Okay. But for that, my mind has to dwell on the thought. Now, why is my mind first not dwelling on the thought? Because as long as I'm listening to it, I can understand it. But the second this session is over, my other world takes over. So if there is a way that every day I can spend a little time contemplating on this thought, holding on to the thought, that by itself is a form of meditation. And from that thought, slowly and slowly, when I spend more and more time on this, what happens is my mind slowly and slowly starts to come to my aid, and it helps me to stay in that thought also. So initially, I have to allow this mind of mine to work with me as a friend to stay in this thought. And I need to extend that time.
So,
Okay.
Sunitha, can Geeta has something? No, can we think like, our mind, it has like a two. With my conditional mind, I can think the same tree as it is like in middle of something, and it is like, as you said, it's a brown color. It should have been like this kind of a thing, in a little bit of a negative and a critical way. That will obstruct us from looking at the beauty and its originality, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
if we start like, practicing ourselves, like only looking at like how it is giving the nice breeze, its beauty of like, giving the shade, only think about like a positive attributes of the tree, not only tree, everything. If we start doing that way and take away our conditional mind in a critical way, then eventually maybe, right? That's what you are trying.
Correct.
I'm trying to understand
Yes,
actually.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
What you have outlined, Madhuri, is one. It's like when you climb a ladder. What is the first step I need to do? So you're saying the first step I need to do is build up positivity.
Yeah. It's
Correct?
going to take me up or something like that.
Correct. So yes. So everything I look at it from a positive point of view. That is very true. But the point about it is, when I'm looking at something with a positive, let me not suppress myself in always looking only at positive. That is first thing to keep in mind. Okay. But at the same time, in order to even develop a positive state of mind, I need to first do some things like, that's why this aspect of karma yoga is always given as one aspect, where I start to first cleanse myself in such a way that I can actually think positively. Which is important,
Yeah.
Before I even, in order for me to think positively, my mind has to be pure enough. Otherwise, if I just keep saying, oh yeah, you have to be always positive, when something bad happens or negative happens or whatever, then, it shouldn't come across as, why did this happen to me? That question should not arise in the midst of going towards positivity. Right? So,
Yeah.
but then you're absolutely right, though, that thinking positive is the first step. But that to think positive itself, there are quite a few steps before you get to positive.
Yeah.
But once you start looking at everything in a positive light, then it becomes easier for me to progress towards even thinking about seeing the oneness or seeing God.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Sunitha, so as
Thank
we
you.
climb up the ladder, at one point we will think that tree is non-existent.
No, you will not see it as non-existence. You will actually see it as only existence, as existence. So right now, I look at tree as existing as a tree. Okay. I see the tree. I see something existing as a tree. I see something existing as a cup. I see something existing as a phone, etc. But once this knowledge sink in, you will see that, existence is in the form of a tree. Existence is in the form of a book. Existence as in the form of something. You're only shifting the reference.
Existence of what?
That existence, that again, let me just bring back this example of this ocean. You will see water existing as a bubble, water existing as a wave, water existing as a froth, water existing. As far as ocean is concerned, you will look at it as water existing everywhere. Once this knowledge sinks in more and more, you will see that, to your question, what is that? You will see that Brahman existing as the tree, Brahman existing as a cup, Brahman existing as a book.
We can also take the example of your necklace, and instead of saying each bead, we can see each bead is like a tree, a flower, a sun. All of us like are maybe different, but we are all stung by the same Brahman, like we are all same.
Correct.
So,
correct. Exactly. And that is why Brahman, the other name for Brahman is Sutratma. Sutra means thread, and Sutratma, it's Brahman that is ultimately there.
So can we say this is the gateway or the pathway? We started learning about Bhagavad Gita. So to get you said your mind must be pure, keeping positive
Meena,
and all.
Yeah, Meena, somehow, is it possible for you to speak closer to the, your voice is very diffused. So we are not able to make sense of what you're saying. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is, you said our mind has to be positive, pure. So can we say we started learning about what is Bhagavad Gita, what Lord Krishna is trying to tell us. So can we say that this is the gateway or the pathway for us to even make our mind positive or think positive? Can we say that?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. Definitely. You can say that studying Bhagavad Gita allows me to develop a positive state of mind. And so there are three ways in which you can develop a positive state of mind. One of them, of course, is like we said earlier, which is Karma Yoga, where I treat everyone and I feed everyone. I do my work to everyone. That is Karma Yoga. But another way of purifying is through knowledge. Definitely, knowledge is a very powerful method. The only thing is, studying Gita is probably a lot more difficult because there is a thinking process involved. Bhagavad Gita needs a lot of thinking and rationalizing. Really, so that's why Bhagavad Gita sometimes is more difficult. The third, of course, is the Bhakti Yoga, where when I totally accept somebody telling me that everything is nothing but God, and I shift my attention immediately. I said, oh, somebody told me this is all God. Great. That also will help develop a positive state of mind. Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm so glad we're having this discussion because this aspect of God needs to be clarified again and again and again. And any amount of times of clarification, it's actually very good because it is only improving our understanding even more. Geeta, you're okay with it so far? Okay. So then, the shlokas that we talked about, he says about how he's present in all the creation, in the water, etc. And so for this one, that's why we said, we have to change. All it is in our mind. It is suddenly the tree is not going to disappear. Suddenly the tree is not going to become Brahman. Like I said, this change, so far I always said, tree is existing, cup is existing, a phone is existing. Now I'm saying existence is in the tree, existence is in the cup, existence is in the phone. That's the attitudinal change that happens once I listen to Bhagavad Gita, So as much as we are listening to the knowledge, if I don't create this attitudinal change along with the knowledge, it will not become a wisdom, Unlike I guess food. If I eat 5 idlis, I can immediately see a change in myself, right? But unfortunately, this knowledge is not like that. It has to be digested well, and really through thinking. The digestion can happen only through a lot of thinking. And that is where we are so, so blessed in our culture to have so many different books, which allows us to ponder upon in many different ways. The same knowledge is being said, but the knowledge is the same. Only one simple thing, that ultimately this entire world is nothing but that existence which we call Sat. That is that same thing which is giving me a lot of joy, which is Ananda. Of course, when I say giving me joy, that also is an attitudinal change that I will make at that point is, I am joy. I don't have to go for joy. So that is an attitudinal change we make with regard to joy, Sat, and then Chit. It is that thing which is the essence of everything, which is the Chit, the consciousness, because of which this entire apara prakriti, this whole inert world, it comes to life. So that is the whole thing that we are saying. So again, continuing with the vibhutis, where I said it gives life to all beings, jivanam sarvabhuteshu, we saw that. And then bijam mam sarvabhutanam, which is, I'm the eternal seed. It's not just a regular seed. It's not like mango. The mango season is almost getting over here now. This season, by the way, was the best season. I think there were mangoes galore. Mangoes so cheap. I mean, even, yes, I just came back from Chennai last night. The Banganapallis, oh my God, so sweet. The point is, when you have even that mango, the seeds, they get broken. But here he's saying that I'm the eternal seed. Bijam mam sarvabhutanam vidhi partha, then buddhi buddhimat. If you're trying to understand, as Meena was saying right now, is the Bhagavad Gita one way to positive thing? Yes, it's that intelligence, I'm that intelligence. I'm the intelligence in Bhagavad Gita. I'm the intelligence in this whole world, because of which you're all able to understand. That's what he's trying to show here. And then here, one important thing I forgot to mention last time, which is clearly, here he says, I'm the strength. And then I'm also the desire. So somebody may say, oh, wow, but isn't desire really bad? But he's saying, no, desire here is, which is free from any raga, free from any likes and dislikes. It's like, if I'm given a certain job and I say that, okay, I'm going to do only this one, but I'm not going to do this. So give me only that kind of a job. It's not that. But we have to be careful here when we say like and dislike. We have to see it from a point of view of also my skill. What am I really good at? Can I really do that? But when I'm doing something which I'm good at, I cannot afford to say that I will do only this or I will do that. Ultimately, God puts us in certain positions so that I can be of value to the universe in a certain way. At that point, I can't say that I won't do this. And that is what he's trying to say, which is free from any unopposed to the nature in beings and the desire. But then what is desire and what is attachment? Desire is something when I'm craving for something, which I don't have, which he says, that is not a bad thing, but attachment is something else. Attachment is holding on to things which I already have. So once I get something, I can't really say I'm going to have this forever, So that leads to a lot of the selfishness. And when I'm, of course, when I act in that selfish manner, I'm actually moving away from what ultimately God or Ishvara decided that I need to do in this world. So that is what he's saying is, and this is what he's saying, desire is good, but desire done, which is in line with my dharma and which I do it selflessly, that is the best way. So that's he says, is the difference between the desire and attachment. That is why the shloka is kind of important. dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kama asmi bharatarshava. I am the desire, which is free from all selfishness, free from all attachment. So then in shloka number 12, where he's now trying to say that ultimately all these thoughts which comes to my mind, these thoughts which are of three different kinds. One of them which is sattvic, then another one which is of the movement, rajasic and tamasic. They all come from me, but I'm not in them. They are in me. So this is a second point I wanted to clarify also, because I didn't touch upon this point. Then as I was reviewing the shlokas, preparing the last couple of days, I said, okay, this one we just need to, so I just want to focus on this point. I'm not in them, but they are in me. So before I do that, can somebody give me your thought on what do you think this means? Because here he's saying ultimately, any kind of thoughts that come to you, they all are coming from me. It is still coming from Ishvara, but he's saying that I am not in them, they are in me.
It means that things are happening, but he's untouched by it. The example of a screen, like movies shown, but the screen doesn't move. Screen stays still. So it doesn't bother him. Whatever is happening, it's happening there, but he's not bound by any actions, anything. He remains untouched there.
Correct. Exactly. That is one way of looking at it. Without the screen, the movie cannot happen, right? We need the screen. But the screen by itself, nothing happens to the screen. So the screen is not dependent upon the movie, but the movie is dependent on the screen. Isn't it? That's the way to look at this example. Very good example, Meenu. So that dependence is the part which he's trying to show. Now, if you use that same example for, let's take the ocean and the water. Okay, the waves, the froth, the bubbles, everything is dependent upon the water. But water is not dependent upon all of them, isn't it? So that is what he's trying to say the same thing. So too, the same example of the mud pot. All the cups and the plates and everything, they all are dependent upon the mud. But the mud is not dependent on the forms. So anything which is dependence, there is a dependence on something, there is always a creation and there is a dissolution. But anything which is not dependent, there is no creation and no dissolution. Isn't that interesting? I mean, so that part of it, I just wanted to make sure it comes across in this shloka, which is very, very, very powerful, Yacha eva satvika bhavaha rajastamsaschaye matta eveti tan vidhi natva aham teshute mai. They all proceed from me. I'm not in them, but they are in me. Because if I don't think about it, it can become sort of confusing. What do you mean? Whenever I convert A to B, A has to be in B, then B also has to be in A, right? But here he's just trying to show that example that ultimately I am there everywhere. I'm not dependent on anybody. So again, a very powerful lesson for us. Where do I identify myself to? I identify myself all the time to the forms which are there in the universe. But these forms are always disappearing. So where are they coming from? They obviously have to come from somewhere. So why not I focus my attention more from where they are coming and not on all these things which are temporary, which are always disappearing. But our mind is not, unfortunately, constantly only dazzled by these glitter which is there, Every time it wants something new, something new, something new. how can I train my mind to go to the more permanency, more, it's a very powerful way of looking at it, even in just a very, very mundane example, if something is, the dollar stores are a lot more popular because they are cheaper, but they don't stay for too long. And sometimes we may think, oh, it's so cheap, I can just buy something today, and then tomorrow I can buy something else and something else. See how the Chinese have captured on that imagination of the mind by providing something which is cheap, so that the mind is always attracted to something new, keeping it. Whereas if I want something really more permanent, something more long lasting, I have to pay more money for it. I have to put more effort into it. So too for the knowledge, if I have to get more of the permanent knowledge, I have to I have to ultimately come to Vedanta and everything, which will not, nothing else will give me greater happiness, greater sukham, greater knowledge, greater permanency. So that is why, so these three thoughts, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, actually is what is Maya. So we have within ourselves that permanency as well as the impermanency. The impermanency is the one which is that whole aspect of Maya, which is made up of the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. So, everything in this world, everything, literally everything is nothing but this combination of only these three gunas, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. And that is why in shloka number 13, he talks a little more about these three gunas. And Swami Chinmayananda actually calls them nothing but, they are all psychological, climatic conditions of the mind. That's all it is. And so, the tamasic guna is always very inert, very sleepy, tiredness, laziness, procrastination, all those things. Rajasic is where you have all these likes and dislikes, and actually all the other moods, which is jealousy, all these different moods are rajasic. And then sattvic moods are the ones which is very, calmness, peace, etc. So all that he's saying in 13th shloka, where he says, tribihi or three. I wonder if the word three came from tribihi. I don't know. Tribihi gunamayihi bhavaihi. I'm the one, the Maya part of it is composed of these gunas. And ultimately, this entire world is fooled. Mohitam na abhijanati. It's fooled by this world, is fooled by these gunas. We pay attention, we give a lot of reality to this aspect, and we think that is what this entire world is. And unfortunately, this glitter of Maya is so strong that it just hides my real aspect. So, composed of the three gunas, tribihi gunamayihi bhavehi. The word bhava is very important to show that everything in this world ultimately is only these three gunas. Whether you take the trees, Swami Tejamananda, actually, I remember him saying that if you take the trees, there are sattvic trees, rajasic trees, tamasic trees. If you take animals, there are sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic animals. If you take anything, they all have these three gunas in different proportions, of course. And ultimately, if you take the whole world, you can still classify that also as tamas, rajas, sattva. But even individual part of it, you can actually classify them also. So because of this gunas, this Maya is so strong, nobody is able to, or very few people can really recognize this world as distinct from them. And also it is not really divided into any of these gunas. Immutable, meaning they're not divided. So that is what in Shloka 13 he says, the whole world is kind of deluded And it's just completely, mohitam na abhijanati. It's because of this glitter that they are all unable to even pierce through it to see to see who I am. Like, for example, on a very, very cloudy day, what happens is the sun is the one. So this is other aspect of how you can think about the Maya. How can Maya be part of Ishvara? So, the sun is the one which creates the clouds. But ultimately what happens, the clouds, they hide the sun, So that's how Maya works. Maya is created by Ishvara, but at the same time, and this power of Maya is, I think I have one definition for Maya here, which is the Maya is always there, but it is up to me to recognize who I am and to penetrate this Maya and recognize my true self. Just like how I have to look through the movie when the movie is, maybe like Ponniyin Selvam or something, when the movie is going on, do we even look through it and say, oh no, I'm looking at the screen? It's sort of different. There's so much amount of glamour, glitter that is happening. Just like that, our life is also like that. Our life, there's so much of movie which is happening. If I can only look at the whole thing as movie that's happening and see who I really am, that would be the best thing, right? So that's why mohitam na abhijanati mam eva param. I am the one who is param. I am the supreme in the midst of all this, and I'm avyayam. Avyayam, I'm not really broken into all these parts, all these things which I think I am in this world. I'm not really broken into sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. That is all just a movie it's trying to show. So then, what is really preventing us from seeing this God or Ishvara? So that part of it is addressed in this 14th shloka here, where he says, the reason why people are not able to really understand who I am is because this power is also part of me, Devi. It is very divine. It is my own part, and I'm the one. It is part of me, which is made of the gunas. And it is this gunas which is actually making it very difficult. Devi hi esha gunamai, mama maya duratyaya. It's extremely, extremely difficult, which I don't think any one of us can argue with Krishna on that. We also say the same thing. Yes, Krishna, you are making our life very difficult for us. You're giving us too many challenges. You're giving us all this, but it is very difficult. But then he says, Mam eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. So he says, but there's a very, very simple solution. All you have to do is take refuge in me, and then everything will just disappear, So that's what he's saying. So this is where I was saying that how I've given the different names of Maya. Maya is avidya, which is, as long as I don't understand my true nature, I'm always in a state of avidya. And the opposite of avidya is vidya, which is knowledge. So Maya is also tamas. It's very, of course, we call it tamas, but of course, it's a combination of all of them. And it is unborn. Unborn in the sense it never dies. It can only die for the person who is totally understood. Even a little bit of Maya means you're in Maya. Okay. So, and then it's Trigunatmakam. It's also called Prakriti. It's Ajnanam. And then it's Jadam. So all these words are the names for Maya. And this is what we are saying, that, Mam eva prapadyante. So the only way to do this is by by surrendering at the feet of the Lord. That is the best way to cross this particular Maya. And I remember one example given by Swami Sarvapriyananda, when he says that it's just like how, a fisherman, when he puts a net. Okay, suppose he's standing in the beach and he's putting this net to catch a lot of fish. You know what some of the fish does? Some of the fish goes close to his leg, and it stays there and it doesn't get caught because the net has been put all the way out, So the same way he says, you just catch hold of Ishvara's feet, and stay there, catch hold of Krishna's feet. And that is the only way you can actually get out of this Maya. So then how do we practice this? So how should we practice this? So the whole idea is, again, to follow this Bhagavad Gita. Every shloka, like Suvarna said, is a Mahavakya. Truly understanding this whole aspect of it and recognizing that Ishvara. Today, why are we not able to do that? Because we are placing our ashraya, our support, on all the other things. My job is very important to me. My whole family is very important to me. My, my material goods are very important to me. All these things is where my ashraya is. But I need to get out of that and focus on that Ishvara. And only then I'll be able to get out of this Maya. So that is the way he's saying, to practice daily that aspect. If I'm convinced, then this is what I should be doing. Yeah.
One side we are saying we have to follow all the karmas, nitya karma, niyatya karma, everything. We have to do all that. So we have to do duties. One side we say we have to do all our duties. The other side we say we have to practice. We have to go beyond Maya and do this. So aren't we caught between both of them?
Not really. It's a very simple thing. So nitya karma and naimittika karma are very important, because nitya karma is where I recognize my child as God. I recognize my husband as God. I recognize my wife as God. And I do the duty to them in that regard. So again, just like we use that example of, trees existing or existence is tree, correct? So too, is my husband God? God is in the form of my husband. God is in the form of my wife. God is in the form of my neighbor. God is in the form of this. I just change. It's an attitudinal change that I just make. That's all it is. So then I'm surrendering to God.
And once you make that attitude change, then you have that attitude also, Krishna Arpanamastu. Everything you start to, like that surrender automatically comes then to God.
Correct. Exactly. That beautiful song, Achyutam Keshavam Narayanam, or so many different beautiful. Bhagavatam is, again, full of stories of Krishna. Each story tells you about that surrender to Krishna only. So in this regard, the next shloka, which talks about the 4 types of devotees, who have surrendered to God. So we, on one hand, we talked about the previous thing about Dushkritino Bhavaha. Here this Devi Gunamai Mama, I think in Tribhir Gunabai Sarvamidam Mohitam na Abhijanati Mamebhya Paramavyayam. So people who are deluded by the world, that is one form. Now he's saying that the only way you can get out of this is by surrender. So who are those 4 type of people who surrender to God? So that is the shloka which I think last time we chanted, but we'll talk about it. So, I'm sorry, 15th one basically is actually, it starts off with first saying how the overpowering effect of this 3 gunas, which prevents us. It actually, most people are deluded or overpowered by this. And the reason of overpowering is because we get very attracted to either the names or forms. So Krishna is saying, don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, he didn't say it, but you can see that this quote must have come from that. Never judge someone by the way somebody looks, or a book by the way it's covered, for inside these pages there's a lot to be discovered, So that is what, in the form of sattvic, rajasic, tamasic gunas, they tend to overpower us and we tend to judge. So what does this really have anything to do with Ishvara, right? That's what we are trying to show here. Again, trying to say that we get so carried away by names and forms, but our idea is to go beyond the names and forms. But of course, this is not an easy thing, and it takes steps to go there. So he says, Namam dushkritino mudaha prapadyante naradhamaha mayaya pahrita jnanaha asuram bhavamashritaha. So he says, the people who are attracted to the names and forms and everything, among them also, the evildoers, the deluded and the lowest of men, they do not seek me. So people who are in that category, they do not see. Also those who by their own delusions are deprived of knowledge, they take the ways belonging to the demons. Again, he's talking about the people who have not surrendered. So in Shloka 16, he says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam janaha sukritinaha Arjuna artaha jignasu artharti jnani. So those are the 4 people who surrendered to God. Okay, 4 different type of people. Now you may think, okay, those who surrender, there's only one category. Not really. There are even there 4 different categories of people who actually surrender to God. So that's the Chaturvidha bhajante mam janaha sukritinaha. So in the previous thing, he says dushkritinaha. So here he says dushkritinaha, meaning those people who do bad things or who don't surrender. But here he says sukritinaha, which is people who do good things. So they are the ones who can this. And who are those 4 people? They are artaha, people who, for example, who are looking for some solace, who are going through a lot of suffering. They actually surrender. Then other people who are jignasu, who are wanting knowledge, they are also people who surrender. Then artharti, who is looking, who are pretty satisfied with things, but they're looking for more material objects and everything. They are another type. But ultimately, there is somebody who is beyond any of these kind of wants in their life. People who are beyond any wants, they also surrender. But there is a difference in the type of surrender. So let's look at, the 4. I know we are running 5 minutes. We are 7:04, but I'll just take, it's very simple to understand. So we have artharti, or the distressed, or the afflicted. People who are going through some suffering in their mind, either mental or physical. Such people will, pray to God. And even in the Bhagavatam, for example, we have the story of Gajendra Moksha, right? So Gajendra prayed to God to save him from the grip of that crocodile. And then we had Draupadi who prayed to Krishna. So all these are examples of people who pray to God to ask God's help to get rid of some kind of an affliction. Then Jignasu is a person who is seeking the knowledge. Like, all of us, we are pretty satisfied with things, but we do need some knowledge to help us get over this Maya, right? So again, from Bhagavatam, this example is given of King Parikshit. So Parikshit knew he was going to die in 7 days. And his mind, he's told that if you listen to Bhagavatam, you'd get moksha. So he is a great example of a jignasu who wanted that knowledge to take him beyond this samsara. And then artharti is a seeker of wealth. Such a person, is at a gross level. Such a person wants to attain, like in Bhajagovindam, we have this first 3 shlokas, Kanchana, Kirti, and Kamini, looking for gold, pleasure, fame. Such person also, they go to temple, for example, and of course, many people go to Tirupati, who is the Venkateshwara, who gives all this, whatever you need. So arthartis, such examples are arthartis. And finally, jnanis are people who one who has realized that there is nothing to be gained other than God. So such person wants to be part of God, so it's the highest form of bhakti or para bhakti, where there's a complete identification with that ultimate reality. So they are all 4 type of devotees. So then the question comes, are all these 4 devotees alike, or is there any one particular one that Lord Krishna loves the most? And of course, we want to be the one that Lord Krishna loves the most. So the answer we will see next time. Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Stop. Stop the share.